I still remember the way my grandmother looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Her eyes carried a quiet worry that I didn't understand as a child. It wasn't anger or disappointment, but something heavier, almost like she could see a storm coming. Every time I saw that look, it made my heart tighten in ways I couldn't explain. I loved her deeply and trusted her more than anyone else in the world. She baked bread every Sunday and told me stories that made the house feel alive. Her hands were worn and soft, a sign of years of hard work and care. She carried herself with quiet strength that made me feel safe no matter what. Yet, in those moments, her warning eyes hinted at something I couldn't yet see. I didn't realize that she was trying to prepare me for a truth that would change everything. Our family gatherings were loud, chaotic, and full of energy that children like me thrived on. Voices overlapped as my aunts argued lightly in the kitchen while preparing food. My uncles discussed old stories in low tones in the living room, and cousins ran through the halls like a storm. Plates clattered, chairs scraped the floor, and laughter bounced off every wall of the house. To me, it felt alive, warm, and completely normal, like nothing could ever go wrong. I never imagined danger in a home full of people who loved me so much. Holidays were my favorite times, full of smell, taste, and noise. Everyone hugged and smiled for pictures while sharing small jokes across the table. The world felt safe inside that house, protected by love and laughter. That is why my grandmother's quiet warnings confused me every single time. Every time we visited her home, she found a quiet moment to pull me aside and speak privately. Sometimes it was while I helped her wash dishes, the warm water running over my hands. Other times, she asked me to sit on the porch swing, the wood creaking under our weight as the sun went down. She always glanced toward the house to make sure no one else was listening. Then she would lean closer, her voice low and serious, making me pay full attention. Her expression changed in those moments, a mixture of sadness and caution that I didn't understand. I could feel the weight of her words, though I didn't know what they meant. Every warning carried a sense of urgency that I couldn't place at the time. I thought she worried too much about everything and everyone. Little did I know, she was trying to save me from something far more complicated than I could imagine. "Sweetheart, you need to be careful around them," she said one day, her voice gentle but firm, leaving no room for doubt. At the time, I didn't understand her words and laughed politely to hide my confusion. How could I be careful around people who had raised me, loved me, and celebrated my birthdays? She seemed serious, yet there was a sadness in her eyes that made my heart ache slightly. I looked at the bustling house behind her and tried to find the danger she spoke of, but I saw only love. I remember wondering if she was imagining problems that didn't exist. I trusted my parents' judgment and assumed they would never allow harm in the family. Still, something in her tone made me pause, though I tried to shake it off. I wanted to believe she was overreacting, yet part of me couldn't ignore her warning. Something inside me whispered that perhaps she knew more than I could ever guess. When I was 10 years old, I finally asked her what she meant during one of our private moments. We were standing in the kitchen, the sunlight casting warm patterns across the floor. She was drying dishes slowly, her hands moving deliberately as she considered my question. "Grandma, why do you always say I should be careful around them?" I asked, innocent but curious. She froze for a moment, as if weighing the consequences of her answer. Her eyes softened, yet carried a weight I could not understand at the time. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but firm, sending shivers through me. "Not everyone who calls themselves family truly means you well," she said, leaving me stunned. Her words sounded impossible to believe and felt strangely heavy in the warm kitchen. I laughed nervously, trying to dismiss the seriousness I felt creeping in. I told her, "But they are my family, Grandma. Why would they ever want to hurt me?" She didn't laugh back, and her face carried a quiet sorrow that made me feel guilty. I realized even then that her words were not empty or imagined. She folded her hands, her fingers interlacing with care, and looked at me with a depth I didn't understand. "One day, you will understand why I keep telling you this," she whispered, her voice soft but full of meaning. I didn't understand then, but I felt a strange knot tighten in my stomach. Her words lingered long after our conversation ended, echoing in my mind. I tried to convince myself it was just an old grandmother's worry, yet a small part of me, even at 10 years old, knew there was truth behind her warning. I tucked her words away into the back of my mind, where they would wait silently for years. As I grew older, life moved forward relentlessly, carrying me away from childhood memories and the warmth of home. School became a constant presence, filling my days with responsibilities and friendships that demanded my attention. Family gatherings became less frequent as everyone's lives grew busy and complicated. Yet every time I saw my grandmother, she repeated the same quiet warning with gentle insistence. "Be careful around them," she said, as if those words were essential to my survival. I began to dismiss them as harmless concern from an older woman. College and friends filled my mind with other worries, and I pushed her warning further into the background. I believed I understood family and love, unaware that a hidden truth waited silently. Little did I know that her words would one day reveal a reality I could not ignore. By the time I reached 22, the weight of her warning began to make sense in the most unexpected way. It was a cold November afternoon when my mother called me, her voice quieter than usual, almost hesitant. Something about her tone immediately unsettled me, making my heart tighten. She asked me to come home that weekend, but didn't give a reason at first, only saying it was important. I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring out at the grey sky, and felt a chill of unease. My grandmother had always seemed invincible, yet something in my mother's words hinted otherwise. I drove home the next morning, a strange sense of foreboding growing with every mile. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, and every passing car felt like a reminder of my uncertainty. I couldn't shake the feeling that the warnings my grandmother had given me were about to make sense. That weekend would change everything. When I arrived at my grandmother's house, I noticed a tension in the air that had never been there before. My aunts whispered in the kitchen, glancing nervously toward the living room. My uncles spoke in hushed tones, stopping whenever I walked past them. The energy felt heavy, almost suffocating, as if the house itself was holding its breath. I realized then that something serious had happened, though no one had told me yet. Grandma's warning echoed clearly in my mind for the first time in years. Be careful around them. I tried to convince myself it was still nothing, but deep down, I felt a fear I hadn't felt as a child. The house seemed smaller, the rooms tighter, and the laughter and voices I remembered from childhood were replaced with whispers. I finally understood that something was wrong. She was lying in her bed when I finally saw her, looking smaller and more fragile than I had ever remembered. Her hair was streaked with grey, and her hands shook slightly as she rested them on the blanket. But her eyes were sharp, alert, and fixed on me the moment I entered the room. I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread as I approached her bedside. The air around her seemed heavy, thick with unspoken words and long-held secrets. I took her hand gently, feeling the coldness of her skin against mine. "Grandma," I whispered, my voice barely carrying over the quiet of the room. She squeezed my hand softly, a gesture that somehow spoke volumes without saying anything. Then she looked at me with an intensity that made my chest tighten. "I'm glad you came," she murmured. "There's something you need to know before it's too late." I sat beside her, my mind racing with questions I had never dared to ask. For a long moment, she didn't speak, her gaze piercing through me as if weighing my readiness. "There are things about our family," she finally said, her voice low and deliberate, "that you've been kept from knowing." My heart started pounding, and a cold wave of fear washed over me. I had grown up surrounded by family love, never imagining that such darkness could exist. "I don't understand," I said cautiously, my voice shaking. She gave me a small, sad smile that did nothing to ease my anxiety. "It's complicated, child," she said. "Some truths are too heavy for young hearts." I nodded slowly, sensing that this conversation would change everything. I could feel a tension building in the room, pressing down on me like an invisible weight. I realized I had never truly known my family, not in the way that mattered most. Her eyes searched mine, silently asking if I was ready to hear what she had to tell. Grandma began to speak about the past, her words deliberate and filled with emotion. She told me about relatives who had acted kindly on the surface but carried hidden intentions beneath. "Not everyone in our family is as they seem," she said softly, her tone serious. My stomach knotted as I tried to grasp what she meant. How could the people I trusted most harbor such deception? She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "I've protected you for so long," she admitted, her voice quivering slightly. "I've watched, waited, and tried to keep you safe from things you don't yet understand." The room felt colder suddenly, though the sun still streamed faintly through the window. Every word she spoke seemed to carve deep into my mind, leaving an impression I could not ignore. I realized then that her warnings had not been exaggerations. They were lifelines. She recounted events that had been carefully hidden from me all my life, things that happened long before I was born. There were arguments, betrayals, and secrets that had shaped the family without anyone ever knowing. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke, the years of carrying these truths pressing on her shoulders. "I've always hoped you would never have to face them," she said, her hand tightening around mine. I felt a mixture of fear, sadness, and confusion, unsure how to process what I was hearing. The family I thought I knew suddenly appeared stranger, more complicated than I had imagined. Every childhood memory now seemed to carry a hidden layer, something I hadn't noticed before. I struggled to keep my composure, realizing that trust and innocence had been stolen from me in ways I could never have foreseen. The house that once felt safe now seemed charged with unspoken tension. Grandma's words created a bridge between my past and the truths I was only beginning to understand. She paused again, letting me absorb the enormity of her confession. "You must remember," she said slowly, "that appearances are deceptive. People can smile and hug, and yet their hearts may not be what you think." I swallowed hard, feeling my throat tighten with emotion. The world I had taken for granted suddenly felt fragile and uncertain. My mind raced back to family gatherings, the laughter, the food, the warmth, and now I wondered what had been real. She gave a small sigh, the kind that carries decades of worry and sorrow. "I have tried to protect you," she repeated, "because I could see the danger long before anyone else could." Her gaze bore into mine, insisting that I understand the seriousness of what she was saying. I nodded, though I barely grasped the full depth of her warning. For the first time, I felt the weight of her foresight pressing on my shoulders. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as her story continued to unfold. Grandma began describing the specific people she had been warning me about all those years. Their smiles had hidden intentions, and their words often carried subtle manipulations. "They want what they want," she said quietly, "and they will stop at nothing to get it." My hands trembled slightly as I gripped hers, realizing the danger she had been shielding me from. I remembered my childhood innocence, my trust in everyone around me, and I felt a pang of betrayal. "How could I have been so blind?" I whispered to myself, my voice barely audible. She shook her head gently, her eyes filled with understanding. "It's not your fault," she said softly. "You were never meant to know until the time was right." Every word she spoke painted a picture of a family dynamic I could barely comprehend. The warmth of the room now felt like a fragile mask over a deeper, darker truth. I realized that my life had been shaped by forces I hadn't seen coming. As she spoke, memories began surfacing that I had long ignored or misinterpreted. Certain smiles, certain phrases, suddenly took on new meanings. Situations that had felt harmless in childhood now seemed suspicious and calculated. I could see now how subtle manipulations had guided events quietly, often without anyone noticing. Her warnings began to make perfect sense, and regret surged through me. "Why didn't I listen sooner?" I asked, my voice shaking with the weight of realization. Grandma's eyes softened, filled with both compassion and sadness. "I tried," she said simply, "but some lessons are learned only when you are ready." The room felt suspended in time, as if the walls themselves held their breath. I understood, finally, that every warning, every glance, every quiet caution from her had been preparation. My life had been carefully guided toward this understanding, even if I hadn't seen it before. She leaned back slightly, closing her eyes as if to gather her strength. "It's never too late to make things right," she said after a long pause. I felt a small spark of hope amidst the fear and confusion. "What should I do?" I asked, desperate for guidance and clarity. Grandma's hand squeezed mine gently, her voice calm and deliberate. "Be careful, but don't shut yourself off," she said, her words echoing in the room. "You must watch, listen, and choose wisely who you trust." I nodded, trying to absorb every syllable, every nuance of her advice. The gravity of her words weighed heavily, but they also offered direction. I realized that her warnings were not just about protection, they were about empowerment. My childhood understanding of family had been shattered, replaced with a more complex, careful awareness. Every story she told added layers to my understanding, revealing patterns I had never noticed. Events from my past seemed to connect like puzzle pieces, forming a picture of hidden motives. The warmth I had associated with family gatherings now felt tinged with caution. Every laugh, every hug, every casual comment from those around me carried a potential hidden meaning. I felt a strange mix of fear and gratitude for the knowledge she was sharing. She had preserved my safety for years, preparing me for moments I had no idea were coming. "Remember this always," she said, "and do not let your heart be blinded by what seems familiar." Her wisdom cut through the fog of my naivety, forcing me to see the world differently. I knew then that I could never go back to being completely innocent again. The hours passed in quiet conversation, her voice soft but unwavering as she revealed more than I had ever known. Each word brought both clarity and unease, connecting decades of hidden truths. I began to understand the full measure of her warnings and the foresight she had exercised. It was overwhelming, but I could feel a strange relief in finally knowing. The house that had once felt safe was now a place of awareness and caution. My grandmother had given me a gift, knowledge that could protect me if I used it wisely. I promised myself silently that I would honor her guidance. She had waited for the right time, and that time was now. I understood at last why she had always said, "Be careful around them." I sat beside my grandmother, my mind racing with 1,000 questions I didn't know how to ask. Her voice, though quiet, carried a weight that made the room feel heavy and still. "You must understand," she said slowly, "that not everyone who smiles at you truly wishes you well." Her eyes locked onto mine, piercing yet gentle, demanding that I grasp the seriousness of her words. I nodded silently, my stomach twisting as I tried to process what she had just said. Memories of childhood family gatherings began surfacing, each smile and hug suddenly feeling more complicated than I remembered. The warmth I had associated with those moments now carried shadows I had never noticed. "I protected you as best as I could," she continued, "because I saw things others could not." Her hands rested lightly on mine, grounding me in the gravity of her revelation. A shiver ran down my spine as the truth started settling like a weight in my chest. I realized then that everything I thought I knew about family might have been only a carefully crafted illusion. She began recounting incidents that had occurred long before I was born, moments that had quietly shaped the dynamics of our family. Every word seemed deliberate, like she had rehearsed it in her mind 1,000 times before speaking. Betrayals, secrets, and subtle manipulations emerged from her memory, painting a picture of a household I had never truly understood. "I've carried these truths with me for decades," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I felt my chest tighten as I realized how much she had endured silently. She described relatives who acted kindly outwardly but concealed intentions that were far from innocent. Each revelation made my world shift, leaving me unsure of whom I could trust. I had taken comfort in the assumption that family meant unconditional love, and now that certainty was gone. The air in the room seemed heavier, as if every breath carried the weight of unspoken truths. Her gaze held mine firmly, insisting that I understand the full measure of what she had lived through. A part of me ached to know that my childhood innocence had been partially shielded from reality. Grandma leaned closer, her voice dropping even further, demanding my full attention. "Some people you call family," she said, "have motives you cannot see, and you must be alert to them." I felt a pang of fear and betrayal twist inside me as I realized that those I trusted most could not be counted on. Her words painted a portrait of quiet deceit and careful planning behind the smiles I had always believed were genuine. "I've tried to protect you, to keep you safe, but some lessons must be learned," she continued, her eyes searching mine for understanding. I struggled to breathe as the gravity of her confession pressed down on me. My childhood memories, once warm and comforting, now seemed like carefully arranged scenes hiding deeper truths. Every laugh and every hug felt suddenly fragile, and I began to see the patterns she had been pointing to for years. I wondered how I had missed the subtle warnings that now seemed obvious. Her careful storytelling made me understand that wisdom often comes through patience and sometimes through observation alone. I realized that I had been given a rare opportunity to see the world through her eyes before it was too late. She recounted specific relatives whose actions had caused pain or tension behind closed doors. "They are skilled at presenting themselves as loving and kind," she said, "but their intentions are different from what they show." I felt my hands tremble slightly as the reality of her words sank in. Each detail she offered made me reconsider every interaction I had witnessed growing up. Smiles that had once felt comforting now seemed calculated, and laughter that had once felt warm now seemed potentially manipulative. "You must always observe closely," she warned, "because words can deceive and appearances can lie." I nodded, knowing that this was not a lesson to be taken lightly. The depth of her knowledge and foresight filled me with both awe and apprehension. I had never realized how complex family dynamics could be, nor the extent to which they could shape my life. Her voice carried a mixture of sadness, love, and urgency that made every word unforgettable. I knew that ignoring her advice was no longer an option. Her stories forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about the past, moments I had misunderstood or dismissed as a child. I began connecting events, conversations, and subtle interactions that now seemed purposeful. Certain comments that had seemed harmless now appeared manipulative or controlling. The more she spoke, the more I realized how much had been hidden from me to preserve my innocence. "I shielded you for as long as I could," she said softly, "but now you must understand for yourself." Fear and gratitude warred inside me as I listened, realizing that her protection had given me time to grow. I felt a wave of regret for not paying closer attention to her warnings all those years. My childhood understanding of trust and love was shattered and reshaped simultaneously. The careful guidance she had given me was now coming to fruition. I knew I had to honor her advice and see the truth clearly, no matter how painful. She paused, letting me absorb the enormity of what she had shared, her hands still holding mine tightly. "You have a choice," she said slowly, "to observe, to decide, and to act with awareness." I felt a heavy weight settle on my shoulders, the responsibility of knowledge pressing down. Her gaze was steady and unwavering, impressing upon me the seriousness of her message. I understood that she had not just been warning me about actions, but about perceptions, awareness, and judgment. Every smile and gesture in the family had layers I needed to learn to read carefully. "Do not be blinded by familiarity," she continued, "because it can mask intentions." Her words resonated deeply, embedding a sense of cautious vigilance into my mind. I realized that her guidance was a gift, one that combined love with practical wisdom. The room felt charged with intensity, each word shaping my understanding of reality. As she continued, she shared the most painful stories first, the ones that had left scars over the years. I could hear the hurt in her voice as she recounted betrayals and disappointments that no one else had known. It was clear that her warnings were not paranoia, but lessons drawn from lived experience. I felt both sadness and a quiet anger at those who had caused pain in secret. She told me about moments where she intervened quietly to protect me from harm I could not have recognized. I acted when I could, she said, because no one else would see it coming. Her transparency and courage filled me with a newfound respect and awe for her wisdom. I began to understand the immense foresight and care required to shield someone from subtle but powerful dangers. I felt the weight of responsibility settling on me, knowing I had inherited part of this vigilance. Every word she spoke was a bridge between childhood innocence and adult awareness, teaching me to see what was hidden. Grandma's voice softened, almost to a whisper, as she explained why she had chosen these moments to reveal the truth. Timing matters, she said, and knowledge is a burden that must be given carefully. I realized that her patient warnings had been exercises in preparation, not simply idle advice. My mind raced through past interactions, trying to identify the subtle cues I had missed. Every laugh, every look, every gesture now felt layered with meaning. Observe closely, think critically, and act wisely, she advised, her tone unwavering. I nodded, understanding that vigilance was as much a part of family as love itself. She gave me strategies disguised as stories, lessons hidden within her recollections. The warmth I had associated with family now mingled with caution, creating a careful awareness I could not ignore. I felt gratitude, fear, and determination all at once, knowing that my journey of understanding had only just begun. Her words would guide me, but the responsibility to act wisely was mine alone. The afternoon light faded slowly through the window, casting long shadows across the room as she shared the last of her recollections. Her hand squeezed mine gently, reminding me of the love behind the warnings. "This is not easy to hear, I know," she said, "but it is necessary." I felt tears prick my eyes as the enormity of her experiences pressed into my consciousness. I realized the magnitude of her courage in protecting me all these years. "Trust yourself," she continued, "and always remember what I have told you." Her words echoed in the silent room, embedding themselves into the foundation of my understanding. I could see now that she had been preparing me for moments I could never have anticipated as a child. The shadows of the past were slowly revealing their truths, and I knew I had to pay attention. Everything I had believed about family, trust, and loyalty was being redefined in that quiet room beside her bed. The next morning, I woke early, the memory of Grandma's words still echoing in my mind like a persistent drum. The house was quiet, almost too quiet, as if it too had absorbed the weight of the night's revelations. I walked slowly down the hallway, each step feeling heavier than the last, weighed down by questions I didn't yet know how to answer. The kitchen smelled faintly of the bread she had baked the night before, a comforting reminder of normalcy amidst the storm of truth. I paused at the window, watching the sunlight stretch across the yard, and realized how different everything felt now. Childhood innocence had been stripped away, replaced with a cautious awareness that clung to every thought. I thought about the relatives she had warned me about, wondering how many times their actions had been carefully disguised. The realization made my chest tighten with both fear and clarity. I knew that from this moment, nothing would feel entirely safe or certain again. Her lessons were already shaping the way I saw the world, even in the small hours of the morning. I decided to take a walk outside, needing to clear my mind and process the torrent of information she had shared. The crisp autumn air filled my lungs as I stepped onto the front porch, the leaves crunching softly beneath my shoes. Every step felt deliberate, a rhythm that mirrored the thoughts racing through my head. I thought about her eyes, sharp and unwavering, insisting that I understand the gravity of her message. Memories of my childhood interactions now felt like puzzles with missing pieces I was only beginning to see. I replayed family gatherings in my mind, examining smiles, gestures, and words that now seemed layered with hidden meanings. I realized how much my grandmother had shielded me, keeping me from danger I had never imagined. Fear and gratitude mingled together, a strange cocktail of emotion that left me both unsettled and aware. I knew that vigilance would now be a permanent part of my life. Every person, every word, every smile could no longer be taken at face value. As I walked further from the house, I began noticing small details I had always overlooked. The way the neighbors glanced at the yard, the subtle tension in voices I once assumed were carefree, the unspoken glances exchanged in hallways. All of it began to make sense. My grandmother's warnings were not merely about individuals, but about reading patterns and understanding hidden intentions. I felt a sudden clarity, as if a veil had been lifted from my eyes, revealing a more complicated reality. Yet the knowledge was both empowering and terrifying, a reminder that the world was rarely as simple as I had once believed. I thought about the years I had ignored her advice, the naive confidence that I had taken for granted. Now, every word she had spoken resonated with significance, shaping my understanding of trust and danger. I promised myself silently that I would never ignore her guidance again. Her foresight had been a lifeline, and I intended to honor it fully. Returning to the house, I felt a renewed sense of determination, tempered by caution. I knew that the people she had warned me about would continue to operate, unaware that I was now awake to their intentions. Every interaction required careful observation, every smile a potential mask for something deeper. I began mentally cataloguing what I had learned from her stories, creating strategies for discernment and self-preservation. The familiarity of my childhood home now felt tinged with layers of complexity I had never recognized. I realized that her warnings were not about fear, but about awareness, about equipping me to navigate life with eyes wide open. Gratitude for her wisdom filled me, tempered by the gravity of the responsibility she had placed on my shoulders. I understood that my path forward would require patience, vigilance, and discernment. The safety I had once assumed in family bonds now demanded careful evaluation. I felt a deep respect for her strength and foresight, qualities I hoped to emulate. In the days that followed, I began noticing subtle interactions that I had previously ignored or dismissed. Conversations carried undercurrents, glances held silent meaning, and gestures hinted at intentions beyond their surface. I realized that I had been observing all along, but now my grandmother's words gave me the tools to interpret what I saw. Patterns emerged that were both troubling and enlightening, confirming much of what she had warned me about. Fear mingled with clarity as I confronted the reality of hidden motives within my family. I understood that I had been partially shielded for my own protection, but the time had come to act with awareness. Her teachings became a guide for every decision, a quiet voice in the back of my mind. I felt both burdened and empowered by the responsibility of understanding what others could not see. Each interaction became a careful study, every word analyzed for layers of meaning. I began to approach relationships with a new combination of empathy and caution. One afternoon, I was confronted directly by one of the relatives my grandmother had warned me about. The smile that once seemed warm now felt measured and deliberate, a mask I recognized immediately. My instincts, honed by her guidance, told me to observe closely before reacting. I noticed subtle cues in body language, inflection in their voice, and the timing of their words, all of which spoke volumes beyond the surface. My grandmother's warnings resonated clearly, guiding my response with precision. I replied calmly, carefully choosing my words, while maintaining awareness of the hidden dynamics. The interaction left me shaken but confident, a testament to the foresight and preparation my grandmother had given me. I realized then how valuable her teachings were in real-world situations, far beyond childhood lessons. The experience reinforced the necessity of vigilance in every aspect of my life. I felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that her wisdom had equipped me to navigate deception with clarity and care. That evening, I returned to my grandmother's side, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and connection. She looked at me, her eyes softening as she noticed the growth in my awareness. "You see it now," she said, her voice filled with quiet pride, "the importance of caution and understanding." I nodded, recognizing that her guidance had shaped not only my perception, but my actions. I realized that her warnings were not about fear or mistrust, but about empowering me to protect myself wisely. The bond between us felt strengthened, rooted in trust, love, and the shared understanding of hidden truths. I could sense her relief that I had finally grasped the lessons she had tried to impart for so many years. Her quiet smile reassured me that I was ready to face the challenges ahead. I felt an emotional weight lift slightly, replaced by a sense of readiness and determination. She had prepared me not just for family conflicts, but for life itself, in ways I could now comprehend fully. Her presence was a reminder that wisdom and love often come together, guiding those willing to listen carefully. The next weeks were filled with careful observation and reflection. I took time to watch interactions, noting patterns that had previously gone unnoticed. I began documenting subtle behaviors, analyzing words and gestures for hidden intentions. Each family gathering became an exercise in awareness, teaching me to interpret actions beyond their surface. My grandmother's voice echoed in my mind, reminding me to trust my instincts while remaining compassionate. I realized that vigilance did not require cynicism, but a careful balance of empathy and discernment. Small victories in understanding gave me confidence and a sense of control over my environment. I started to feel capable of navigating complex social dynamics with greater clarity and foresight. Each day reinforced the lessons she had patiently instilled in me. I could feel myself growing stronger, more capable, and more aware with every passing interaction. One afternoon, a private conversation with my mother shed even more light on the hidden tensions within our family. She hesitated initially, then shared details that confirmed much of what my grandmother had warned me about. I listened intently, noting her careful choice of words and the subtle fear in her voice. The revelations were staggering, painting a picture of manipulation, jealousy, and long-held grudges. I realized that my grandmother's warnings had been not only necessary, but life-saving in their subtlety. Every word, every pause, every nuance was a lesson in careful observation and measured response. I began to grasp the full extent of her foresight and the layers of protection she had woven around me. Fear mingled with gratitude as I internalized the depth of the guidance I had been given. It became clear that understanding and patience were as vital as vigilance. I felt a profound responsibility to navigate these relationships with the care she had modeled. Her patience and foresight had given me the tools to survive and thrive in a complex family landscape. As the weeks went by, I noticed my own instincts sharpening in ways I hadn't anticipated. I began to sense subtle shifts in tone, body language, and intention with almost uncanny accuracy. Conversations that would have once passed unnoticed now revealed layers of hidden meaning. I found myself responding with measured caution, aware of the delicate balance between trust and discernment. Family members who had once seemed harmless now appeared in a different light, their motivations clearer through the lens of my grandmother's lessons. I realized that these insights were not born of fear, but of careful attention and experience. The ability to read these subtle cues became both a survival skill and a source of confidence. I started documenting observations mentally, creating a framework for understanding interactions. My grandmother's guidance had become an internal compass, guiding me through complex social landscapes. Every day reinforced the importance of vigilance, awareness, and thoughtful response. One evening, I had an encounter that tested the skills my grandmother had instilled in me. A relative approached with a smile that seemed genuine but contained undertones I recognized immediately. I listened carefully, observed their gestures, and noted the hidden cues that would have gone unnoticed before. My response was deliberate and composed, a reflection of the lessons I had internalized. The interaction ended without conflict, yet I felt a deep sense of accomplishment for applying her wisdom effectively. I understood that her guidance was as much about strategy as it was about awareness. I realized that vigilance did not mean paranoia, but a thoughtful balance of trust and caution. Each encounter became a test of my perception and judgment, reinforcing the value of her teachings. I felt a growing confidence in navigating situations that once would have left me vulnerable. The house, the gatherings, the interactions, all now carried a different meaning. I knew that my grandmother's legacy would continue to influence my decisions for the rest of my life. Reflecting on the past months, I began to see the profound impact my grandmother's foresight had on my development. Her patient warnings had prepared me for situations I could not have anticipated. The knowledge she shared had shifted my understanding of family, trust, and protection. I realized that her guidance was not about creating fear, but about cultivating awareness and resilience. Every family gathering became an opportunity to practice discernment, every conversation a chance to apply lessons of careful observation. I felt a deep respect for her ability to navigate complexities that I was only beginning to comprehend. Her wisdom had provided a framework for understanding the hidden layers of human behavior. I began to recognize the importance of patience, reflection, and cautious trust in all relationships. The lessons she had imparted became a guiding principle for my actions and decisions. I knew that my awareness and vigilance were now inseparable from my identity. During a quiet evening, I sat with my grandmother once more, reflecting on the journey we had shared. Her eyes met mine, warm and knowing, filled with pride and relief. "You are learning," she said softly, "the way I always hoped you would." I felt a surge of gratitude for her guidance and patience over the years. The depth of her foresight and the care she had taken to prepare me was humbling. I realized that her warnings had not been burdensome but protective, offering me a chance to navigate life with clarity. Every lesson, every story, every subtle caution now made perfect sense. I felt empowered, equipped with the knowledge to make informed choices in the complex web of family dynamics. Her words echoed in my mind as a constant reminder of the importance of observation and discernment. I understood that her legacy was not only her love, but the wisdom she had carefully passed down. I knew that I would carry her teachings with me always, honoring her foresight and care. Over the following weeks, I began applying her lessons in small but significant ways. Conversations were approached with a heightened awareness of tone and intention. Interactions that once felt natural now required careful consideration. I documented patterns in my mind, linking behaviors and gestures to hidden motives. The knowledge was empowering, transforming fear into preparedness and uncertainty into clarity. I realized that my grandmother's teachings had given me the tools to navigate life intelligently. I felt gratitude for her patience, her love, and her unwavering commitment to my safety. Each day became a test of perception and judgment, reinforcing the importance of vigilance. I began to see the subtle manipulations and hidden agendas that had previously gone unnoticed. Her legacy was alive in my choices, shaping my understanding of family, trust, and human behavior. I felt a sense of readiness I had never known before. One afternoon, a challenging confrontation arose that tested everything I had learned. A family member attempted to manipulate a situation, relying on charm and familiarity to obscure their true intentions. I responded with calm awareness, observing carefully and choosing my words strategically. The interaction was tense but concluded without conflict, leaving me with a sense of accomplishment. I realized that my grandmother's guidance had prepared me for precisely this kind of moment. Her lessons had transformed awareness into action, equipping me to navigate the complexities of relationships. I felt a growing sense of confidence in my ability to interpret motives and act wisely. Each encounter reinforced the importance of observation, discernment, and measured response. The subtle power of her wisdom became increasingly apparent. I knew that my path forward would require both caution and courage. Her foresight had given me the ability to protect myself while maintaining integrity. By the end of the month, I had developed a structured way to approach family interactions. I analyzed conversations, interpreted body language, and noted patterns of behavior that revealed hidden truths. My grandmother's teachings had become a guiding framework, blending caution with empathy and observation. I understood that her warnings were not merely about danger, but about perception and insight. I began teaching myself to remain alert without becoming paranoid, a delicate balance that required practice and reflection. The family I had once taken at face value now existed in a complex web of relationships, each requiring careful navigation. I felt gratitude for the foresight my grandmother had provided and a commitment to honor her guidance. Her wisdom had transformed my understanding of trust, love, and protection. Each day was now an opportunity to apply what she had taught me. I realized that awareness, patience, and careful judgment were the true lessons of her legacy. The following morning, I awoke with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to apply the lessons my grandmother had shared so carefully over the years. Each interaction in the family now demanded full attention, requiring me to observe every subtle gesture, every tone of voice, and every pause in conversation. I realized that the world I once viewed with innocence had layers I could no longer ignore. My grandmother's words echoed in my mind, guiding me through moments that might have previously gone unnoticed. "Trust cautiously, observe carefully," she had said repeatedly, and now I understood the depth of that advice. I moved through the house with awareness, watching interactions unfold like a carefully orchestrated play. Even the smallest comment or smile could carry hidden meaning, a clue to intentions I needed to discern. I felt both anxious and empowered, understanding that knowledge itself was a tool for protection. Her foresight had equipped me to navigate complexities I had never anticipated, and I was determined to honor it fully. Every step I took was deliberate, a reflection of the awareness she had instilled in me. That afternoon, I found myself in the living room, watching relatives interact in ways I had never noticed before. A cousin who seemed casual in conversation now revealed subtle manipulation in tone and gesture. An uncle's compliments carried hints of hidden motives I had overlooked for years. I remembered my grandmother's guidance about reading beyond appearances, and suddenly everything clicked into place. Patterns emerged that had previously been invisible to my younger self. I realized how much she had protected me, shielding me from subtle dangers while preparing me to recognize them when the time came. Gratitude and fear mingled within me as I understood the significance of her warnings. Every gesture, every word, every smile now required careful interpretation. I felt the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders, knowing that awareness was both a gift and a burden. Her wisdom was no longer abstract. It was practical, a lens through which I could now perceive the hidden layers of family life. I understood the necessity of patience, observation, and careful judgment in every interaction I encountered. Later that evening, I had an experience that tested my growing awareness. One relative attempted to manipulate a conversation with charm and familiarity, assuming I would respond naively as I had in the past. I watched carefully, noting subtle shifts in expression, changes in tone, and the pacing of their words. My grandmother's teachings guided my response, allowing me to navigate the interaction without conflict or exposure. I spoke deliberately, maintaining composure and control over the situation. The relatives' intentions became clear through their subtle cues, confirming the lessons I had internalized from my grandmother. I felt a mixture of fear, satisfaction, and gratitude as the encounter ended without incident. Her guidance had transformed knowledge into action, empowering me to recognize and respond to hidden motives. Each challenge reinforced the importance of awareness, patience, and careful discernment. I knew that her wisdom was a lifelong tool, shaping my understanding of family, trust, and human behavior in profound ways. Over the following days, I continued to refine my skills in observation and discernment. Every conversation became an exercise in analysis, every gesture a clue to underlying intentions. I began documenting subtle patterns mentally, linking actions and words to possible motives. Family gatherings, once chaotic and comforting, now carried hidden layers I could interpret and navigate. My grandmother's lessons were becoming internalized, influencing my instincts and responses in real time. I realized that vigilance was not paranoia but an essential form of self-protection and awareness. Gratitude for her guidance mixed with a sense of responsibility, knowing that my actions would now reflect both caution and intelligence. I felt increasingly capable of navigating complex social dynamics without being blindsided. Each observation became a stepping stone toward understanding relationships more deeply. Her teachings had become a compass, pointing me toward clarity amidst uncertainty. I understood that life's lessons often arrived slowly, revealed through careful attention and patient application. One afternoon, I encountered another situation that tested my judgment and awareness. A distant relative approached, presenting themselves with warmth and familiarity that masked subtle manipulation. I recognized the signs instantly: the slight pause before speaking, the careful placement of words, the almost imperceptible changes in body language. My grandmother's voice echoed in my mind, reminding me to trust my observations and respond thoughtfully. I chose my words carefully, navigating the conversation with caution and clarity. The interaction concluded without confrontation, but I felt a sense of accomplishment for applying her teachings effectively. It was a clear demonstration of how preparation, awareness, and patience could transform potentially harmful encounters into manageable situations. I realized that her guidance had not only protected me, but empowered me to act with wisdom and discretion. Each successful application of her lessons strengthened my confidence and reinforced the value of vigilance. I knew that the ability to read intentions and act deliberately was now part of my identity. Her foresight had prepared me for challenges I could not have anticipated on my own. As the weeks progressed, I began to see the subtle influence of my grandmother's guidance in everyday life. I noticed the careful orchestration of interactions among relatives, the hidden agendas, and the unspoken hierarchies that had shaped family dynamics for years. Observing these patterns allowed me to anticipate behaviors and act in ways that maintained my safety and integrity. I understood the importance of discernment, of reading beyond surface appearances to grasp true intentions. Each day provided new lessons in patience, observation, and careful judgment. I felt gratitude for the foresight my grandmother had shown, recognizing that her protective measures had been deliberate and wise. Her guidance had become a part of my consciousness, influencing not only family interactions, but the way I approached the world at large. Awareness and caution became tools for navigating complex relationships and understanding human behavior more deeply. I realized that these skills were not simply for survival, they were a framework for living wisely. My grandmother had gifted me more than protection. She had given me the ability to see clearly and act wisely. One evening, as I reflected on the progress I had made, I felt a deep connection to my grandmother's wisdom. Her patient teaching, her careful observation, and her unwavering vigilance had prepared me in ways I could never have imagined. I understood now that her warnings were not rooted in fear, but in love and foresight. Each lesson, each story, each cautionary word had shaped my ability to navigate complex relationships with intelligence and care. I felt empowered by the knowledge she had shared, aware of the hidden dynamics in my family, but equipped to act wisely. Gratitude and respect swelled within me, knowing that her foresight had provided a foundation I could rely upon. Every interaction became an opportunity to practice discernment and apply the lessons she had imparted. Her guidance had transformed my understanding of trust, loyalty, and protection. I realized that vigilance, patience, and observation were not burdens but gifts, tools to navigate life with clarity and purpose. My grandmother's legacy was alive in me, shaping my perception and actions with precision and love. The culmination of these experiences reinforced a deep understanding of human behavior and family dynamics. I began to approach relationships with intentionality, balancing trust with careful observation. Every interaction became an exercise in awareness, every word and gesture an opportunity to understand underlying motives. The lessons my grandmother had imparted became the foundation for my decision-making and judgment. I understood that knowledge, vigilance, and patience were not only protective but empowering. Her foresight had guided me through moments I could not have navigated alone, shaping my ability to act wisely in complex situations. I felt a sense of readiness and confidence I had never experienced before. Every day reinforced the importance of observation, discernment, and careful judgment in navigating relationships. I knew that her guidance had prepared me not only for family matters, but for life itself. Her teachings were now woven into the very fabric of my being. Reflecting on the journey, I realized that my grandmother's warnings had always been more than cautionary advice. They were lessons in perception, awareness, and self-preservation. She had nurtured me, protected me, and prepared me for realities I could not yet understand as a child. The depth of her insight, the patience of her teaching, and the wisdom of her guidance became clear over time. I understood that vigilance and discernment were forms of love, both for oneself and for others. Every story she told, every word she whispered, carried lessons that shaped my understanding of human behavior. I felt profound gratitude for her foresight and dedication, recognizing the value of her teachings in every aspect of life. The ability to see beneath the surface, to recognize hidden motives, and to act with awareness had become part of my identity. I knew that my grandmother's guidance would continue to influence my life long after her presence. Her wisdom had given me tools, clarity, and resilience I would carry forever. The following morning, I awoke to the quiet hum of the house, the memory of my grandmother's lessons fresh in my mind. Every corner of the home seemed imbued with her presence, each shadow a reminder of the careful vigilance she had taught me. I walked through the rooms slowly, noting details that once seemed insignificant, the placement of furniture, the way relatives moved through the space, and the subtle cues of conversation. Each observation was now filtered through the lens of awareness she had instilled in me. I realized that her lessons were about more than safety. They were about understanding human behavior and recognizing patterns that often go unnoticed. The house, once familiar, now felt layered with complexity, each interaction revealing hidden intentions. My grandmother's voice echoed in my mind. Observe closely, trust cautiously, and act wisely. I understood that vigilance was not about fear, but about empowerment. Her foresight had given me tools to navigate life with clarity and purpose, and I intended to honor them fully. Each day became a practice, a careful study of the people and world around me. Later that day, I joined a family gathering, my senses alert to nuances I had previously ignored. Conversations, laughter, and casual remarks now carried subtle undercurrents of intention and meaning. I watched a cousin's gestures carefully, noting the deliberate pauses and inflections in their voice. An aunt's compliments, once comforting, now hinted at control and expectation. The lessons from my grandmother shaped every observation, allowing me to see beyond appearances and detect hidden motives. I felt a mix of unease and clarity, realizing how much I had overlooked in my earlier years. The warmth of family gatherings was now tempered with cautious awareness. Every smile, every touch, every shared memory required careful interpretation. I realized that this awareness was not just protective, it was empowering, giving me a clearer understanding of the world I had taken for granted. Her guidance had transformed the way I interacted with others, making me both cautious and confident. The realization struck me. Knowledge was a gift, and vigilance was the tool to wield it wisely. That afternoon, I encountered a situation that tested my growing instincts. A relative approached me with a warm smile, but the subtleties in their tone and gestures immediately raised red flags. I listened carefully, analyzing each word and the intent behind it. My grandmother's lessons guided me, reminding me to respond with caution and discernment. I maintained composure, choosing my words thoughtfully, ensuring that I neither revealed ignorance nor allowed manipulation to take hold. The interaction was tense but concluded without conflict, leaving me with a sense of quiet accomplishment. I recognized that her foresight had prepared me for precisely this kind of moment. Her lessons had transformed observation into actionable insight, empowering me to navigate potentially harmful encounters with intelligence and care. Each experience reinforced the value of patience, vigilance, and careful judgment. I realized that my grandmother's wisdom was not simply theoretical, it was practical, a toolkit for real-world interactions. Every encounter became an opportunity to apply what I had learned and test my understanding. Over the following days, I noticed subtle patterns emerging in family dynamics that I had once overlooked. Conversations revealed hidden agendas, gestures hinted at unspoken intentions, and interactions carried layers of meaning I was only beginning to interpret. My grandmother's teachings allowed me to connect these threads, creating a clearer picture of motives and relationships. I felt both empowered and burdened by the knowledge, understanding the responsibility it carried. Awareness required careful balance, trust tempered with observation, compassion balanced with discernment. Each day became a training ground for applying her guidance, reinforcing the lessons in real time. I realized that the ability to see beyond the surface was a skill she had intentionally cultivated in me. The more I practiced, the more confident I became in navigating complex social landscapes. Her foresight had instilled patience and clarity, teaching me that understanding often requires time and careful attention. Every interaction was now an opportunity to refine my awareness and judgment. One evening, a confrontation arose that tested the full extent of my preparedness. A relative attempted to manipulate a situation, using charm and familiarity to obscure their true intentions. I recognized the signs immediately: subtle shifts in posture, careful word choice, and nuanced expressions of control. My grandmother's voice guided me, urging observation, patience, and measured response. I responded calmly, maintaining composure while interpreting hidden motives and calculating the safest course of action. The encounter ended without conflict, yet I felt a deep sense of accomplishment for successfully applying her lessons. Her teachings had transformed awareness into actionable skill, giving me the tools to navigate deception without compromise. I realized that vigilance was not fear, it was power, clarity, and preparation. Each experience reinforced the importance of observing closely, trusting cautiously, and acting wisely. Her guidance had prepared me to navigate complex family dynamics with both intelligence and grace. I felt a growing sense of confidence and readiness for whatever challenges might arise. As the weeks progressed, I noticed that my perspective on relationships had shifted profoundly. The world of family interactions was no longer straightforward. Each conversation, gesture, and glance carried multiple layers of meaning. My grandmother's guidance had trained me to see these layers, interpret them, and respond appropriately. Trust was no longer automatic, it was assessed, observed, and earned. The clarity I gained allowed me to navigate delicate situations while maintaining integrity and empathy. I felt grateful for the patient foresight she had shared and the skills she had helped me develop. Every interaction became a test of observation and judgment, reinforcing the lessons she had imparted. I realized that understanding motives and behaviors was not just protective, it was empowering, giving me agency in situations that once felt uncertain. Her wisdom had equipped me with a framework for navigating life thoughtfully and strategically. I understood that patience, vigilance, and discernment were lifelong skills, essential for both survival and meaningful connection. During a quiet evening, I reflected on how much my grandmother had shaped my understanding of family and trust. Her stories, warnings, and guidance had created a foundation that allowed me to navigate complex relationships with confidence. I realized that her foresight had been an act of love, preparing me for challenges I could not have anticipated as a child. Each lesson she imparted became a tool, a lens through which I could observe, understand, and act wisely. I felt a deep sense of gratitude for her patience and wisdom, knowing that her influence would guide me for the rest of my life. Her teachings had transformed my awareness, giving me the ability to interpret motives, detect hidden intentions, and make informed decisions. Every family gathering, every conversation, and every subtle gesture became an opportunity to practice these skills. I knew that her legacy lived on in me, guiding my perception and shaping my actions with clarity and purpose. Her influence was profound, a constant source of strength, guidance, and insight. By the end of the month, I had honed my ability to read people and situations with increasing accuracy. Subtle shifts in tone, gestures, and expression revealed patterns that had once gone unnoticed. My grandmother's guidance allowed me to navigate these complexities with both caution and confidence. I understood that vigilance was not fear, it was awareness, discernment, and preparation. I began to approach each interaction strategically, balancing empathy with careful observation. Her lessons had equipped me with tools to protect myself while maintaining integrity and composure. Every encounter reinforced the importance of patience, attentiveness, and thoughtful judgment. I felt a profound respect for her wisdom and the foresight she had employed to ensure my safety. The skills I had developed were now ingrained, shaping the way I engaged with family and the world beyond. Her teachings had become an inseparable part of my identity, guiding me in both subtle and significant ways. That morning, I awoke with a heightened sense of awareness, the lessons my grandmother had instilled in me echoing vividly in my mind. Every interaction I anticipated during the day felt like a puzzle I needed to decipher carefully, with subtle cues hidden in tone, gestures, and expressions. I reminded myself of her words: observe closely, trust cautiously, act wisely. Her guidance had transformed the way I approached relationships, allowing me to see layers of meaning that had previously gone unnoticed. Walking through the house, I noticed the quiet ways family members interacted, subtle shifts that hinted at hidden intentions. I realized that vigilance was not about fear, but about empowerment, giving me the tools to navigate complex social dynamics. Each conversation became an opportunity to test my perception and understanding. I felt both anxious and confident, knowing that my grandmother's foresight had equipped me to handle what lay ahead. Her lessons were alive in my actions, guiding me through interactions with care and discernment. The day ahead would be another step in applying the wisdom she had so carefully passed down. Later that afternoon, I attended a family gathering, my senses fully alert to the nuances around me. Every word spoken, every gesture made, seemed layered with hidden meaning I was now capable of interpreting. A cousin's laughter, once comforting, now carried undertones I recognized as manipulation. An aunt's compliments revealed subtle expectations that had gone unnoticed in the past. I realized that my grandmother's teachings were guiding me, helping me navigate relationships with both empathy and caution. Patterns emerged that clarified long-standing tensions, illuminating dynamics I had never fully understood. Gratitude and apprehension mingled within me as I processed the complexity of family interactions. I understood that trust was no longer automatic. It had to be observed, interpreted, and earned. Her lessons had given me the ability to see beyond appearances, to detect motives, and to act with intention. Each observation reinforced the importance of patience, discernment, and careful judgment. I felt a growing confidence in my capacity to navigate these intricate relationships successfully. That evening, I encountered a situation that tested my growing instincts and ability to apply my grandmother's wisdom. A relative approached with a warm smile and casual demeanor, attempting to conceal their true intentions beneath familiarity. I noticed subtle shifts in their body language, slight pauses in speech, and carefully chosen words, all indicators my grandmother had taught me to recognize. I responded calmly, maintaining composure while assessing the underlying motives, ensuring that I did not reveal ignorance or allow manipulation to succeed. The interaction concluded without confrontation, leaving me with a quiet sense of achievement. I realized that my grandmother's guidance had prepared me for precisely this type of moment, turning observation into actionable skill. Vigilance was not fear, but empowerment, giving me the clarity to navigate challenges with confidence. Each experience reinforced the necessity of awareness, patience, and thoughtful response. I felt a growing sense of agency in family dynamics, knowing that her lessons had equipped me to act wisely. The confidence I gained was rooted in her foresight and the careful preparation she had provided. Over the following days, I continued to refine my observational skills, noting subtle behaviors and patterns that revealed the underlying dynamics of my family. Conversations and gestures became sources of information, allowing me to anticipate motives and understand hidden intentions. My grandmother's teachings were now internalized, guiding my decisions and responses in real time. Awareness became second nature, allowing me to balance trust with discernment and empathy with caution. I realized that vigilance was a gift, providing both protection and clarity in situations I might once have navigated naively. Each day became a training ground, an opportunity to apply her lessons and test my growing understanding. The household, once familiar and simple, now existed in a more complex, layered reality that demanded thoughtful attention. My gratitude for her foresight and patience deepened as I recognized the profound impact of her guidance. Her teachings had shaped not only my perception, but my approach to relationships, equipping me with tools for life. I understood that every interaction could serve as a lesson, and every observation as a step toward mastery of discernment. One afternoon, a particularly challenging interaction occurred, providing a test of the skills I had developed. A relative attempted to manipulate a discussion using charm and familiarity, assuming I would respond as I once had in the past. I observed subtle shifts in tone, posture, and expression, immediately recognizing the warning signs my grandmother had taught me to detect. I responded deliberately, maintaining control of my words and actions while interpreting their motives carefully. The encounter concluded without conflict, yet I felt a strong sense of accomplishment, knowing that her guidance had allowed me to navigate the situation successfully. Her lessons had transformed vigilance into practical skill, empowering me to respond effectively without sacrificing integrity. I realized that awareness and patience were not merely protective tools, they were forms of empowerment, giving me confidence in complex social situations. Each encounter reinforced the importance of discernment, observation, and strategic response. I felt increasingly capable of interpreting hidden motives and managing interactions thoughtfully. Her wisdom had become a framework through which I could navigate life with clarity and skill. Reflecting on the past month, I noticed a profound shift in my understanding of family and human behavior. The lessons my grandmother had imparted were no longer abstract. They were tangible tools shaping my perception and guiding my actions. I observed the patterns, motives, and subtleties that had previously escaped notice, recognizing the care with which she had prepared me. Trust now required careful observation, discernment, and earned respect. Awareness had become a reflex, shaping how I approached every interaction and decision. I realized that my grandmother's foresight had equipped me not only to survive family dynamics, but to understand and navigate them with skill. Gratitude for her guidance mingled with a sense of responsibility, knowing that I carried forward the lessons she had so carefully passed down. Each day offered an opportunity to practice vigilance, empathy, and measured judgment. Her teachings were now an inseparable part of my identity, influencing both small interactions and significant decisions. I felt the depth of her love, patience, and wisdom in every action I took. During a quiet evening, I sat alone, reflecting on the impact of my grandmother's guidance on my life. Her patient teaching had instilled awareness, discernment, and self-protection that I could now apply confidently. I realized that her warnings were acts of love, intended to prepare me for challenges I could not have anticipated as a child. Every story she had shared, every word of advice, and every cautionary tale had contributed to a foundation of understanding I could rely upon. I felt profound gratitude for the foresight she had shown and the patience she had exercised over the years. Awareness, discernment, and strategic action were now deeply ingrained in my approach to relationships and life. I recognized the responsibility her teachings carried, the ability to see clearly, act wisely, and protect myself without losing compassion. Her influence was enduring, shaping my perception and choices in ways I could never have anticipated. I understood that vigilance and wisdom were intertwined, forming a legacy I could honor through my actions and decisions. The lessons she had imparted were alive, guiding me through both subtle and complex challenges. By the end of the month, I had developed a disciplined approach to observing, interpreting, and responding to family interactions. I recognized patterns, anticipated motives, and applied careful judgment in ways that had once been impossible for me. My grandmother's guidance had transformed my understanding of trust, vigilance, and human behavior. Each day reinforced the value of patience, careful observation, and strategic thinking. I felt increasingly confident in navigating situations that had once seemed uncertain or overwhelming. Awareness had become both a shield and a tool, allowing me to act thoughtfully while maintaining integrity and composure. Her lessons had not only protected me, but empowered me to engage with the world strategically and empathetically. I realized that discernment, vigilance, and patience were essential skills for life beyond the boundaries of family alone. My grandmother's foresight had given me clarity, preparation, and the ability to act wisely. Her wisdom had become a guiding principle, shaping my interactions and decisions in profound and lasting ways. That morning I awoke with a sense of calm determination, knowing that the lessons my grandmother had imparted were now fully integrated into my awareness. Every interaction, every glance, every word held layers of meaning that I could interpret with growing confidence. I walked through the house deliberately, noticing subtle cues in posture, expression, and tone that revealed more than the surface suggested. My grandmother's voice echoed in my mind, reminding me to remain observant, patient, and thoughtful in every response. Trust was no longer given freely. It was earned, measured, and balanced with careful discernment. Each family gathering, each conversation, became a practice in applying these lessons, reinforcing the importance of awareness in navigating relationships. I realized that her foresight had given me not only protection but empowerment, allowing me to act with clarity and confidence. Gratitude for her guidance mixed with a quiet pride in the skills I had developed under her careful tutelage. Every observation now served a purpose, guiding my choices with insight and precision. Her wisdom had become a part of me, shaping my perception and actions in ways that would last a lifetime. That afternoon, a particularly subtle interaction tested my ability to interpret hidden intentions. A cousin approached with warmth and familiarity, attempting to obscure their motives behind charm and casual conversation. I immediately noticed small shifts in expression, the timing of words, and body language that suggested a more complicated agenda. I responded deliberately, maintaining composure while evaluating the underlying intent, ensuring that my actions reflected both caution and understanding. The encounter ended without conflict, yet I felt a deep sense of accomplishment for applying my grandmother's lessons successfully. Her guidance had transformed observation into actionable skill, providing me with the tools to navigate potentially tricky situations with intelligence and care. Each interaction reinforced the importance of discernment, patience, and careful judgment. I understood that vigilance was not fear. It was empowerment, clarity, and preparation for the complexities of human behavior. The skills I had developed allowed me to engage with confidence while protecting myself from manipulation or harm. Her legacy of foresight and wisdom had become an inseparable part of my identity, guiding me in subtle and profound ways. I knew that the ability to see beyond the surface would remain a lifelong tool, one that I could rely on in every relationship and challenge I faced.